My name is Dr. Peter Tarlow, and I'm with my colleague and friend, known as Juergen, or to some people, Thomas Steinmetz. And he will be speaking to you today from the Ala Moana Shopping Center. So it's going to give us a completely different view of how the world is going. So, Juergen, what's going on there in Hawaii, in the Aloha State?
Well, it's a beautiful day here. It's nice and sunny. I'm at the Ala Moana Shopping Center, and everyone who has visited Waikiki or Oahu knows where I'm at, and actually right in front of Bloomingdale's. And it's busy here. I mean, the state is busy. Tourism is back 100%, and people are shopping. I guess there's still money out there for shopping, even though things are getting awfully expensive.
Yeah.
But the weather is nice today. I don't know how it is in College Station. I'll be flying to Houston actually on Friday night. I'm looking forward being in Houston on Saturday. So you need to tell me how the weather is going to be on Saturday and how it is today.
Well, we're expecting it to be hot and humid on Saturday. No rain, so that's the good news. But it will be in the 90 degrees, or about 38 degrees on the Celsius scale. So it will be humid and it will be hot, but you won't have any rain. It's really
That's good.
interesting for me to see you there in Hawaii. I understand, and we haven't really talked about this at all, but Hawaii's tourism is so booming that they've abolished the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Am I correct on that, or am I misreading?
No, they didn't. Actually, it was saved the last minute. We still have the Hawaii Tourism Authority. However, budget was cut tremendously. But it had I would say a bittersweet ending. They didn't eliminate it like what some of the lawmakers wanted to do. They're now renewing the marketing contracts for the US and Canada and maybe some other destinations. So I think everything is going back to normal. And we do have a big achievement coming up here. We finally, after 20 years in building, our rail system is going to be open on July 1st.
Wow.
And it's only going to be after 20 years. Listen to this: a very short stretch of a few miles, and it goes from Ever to the stadium. It doesn't go as far as the airport, and it's not going to go as far as Kaka'ako, or they haven't even built the rail towards Ala Moana and further than this. But at least they're going to be a stretch, and I heard it's going to be free for the first day. So anyone who happen to be in Hawaii, this is you can make history in being one of the first people riding our rail.
Is this a light
1st.
rail, or is this a subway, or is this above ground, below ground? Where in the air? Where is it?
It's above ground. It should have been a light rail. Many people say it's a regular rail. It is quite heavy, and you should see the stations. It's massive. So I don't know where they expect all these people. And it is the most expensive rail project ever built in the United States. So I guess it's a big deal. It has been in the making for more than 20 some years now. And I heard it's going to be 2030 or 2032 when they finally think they're going to be finished with the project. But 2030 Hawaii time, maybe 2050. I won't be there most likely to see it. But let's have wishful thinking, I guess.
That's very interesting, especially when we talk about the importance of cutting back on gas and fossil fuels. I assume this train is an electric train then.
It is an electric train from what I can see, yes.
So
and we have a lot of electric cars. Actually, Hawaii is the #1 state in the United States for electric cars. And it makes a lot of sense because you really cannot go any more than really 100 miles back and forth from one side to the island to the other at the most. And an electric car can do this in one load.
Well, so where are they getting the electricity from?
Everywhere. I mean, even here at Ala Moana Shopping Center, you get free electricity at all the parking lots.
No. Who's producing the electricity? It's got to come from someplace.
It got to come from someplace. Don't ask me. I'm not the expert on this one, but I know you can. If you have an electric car, you won't have problem filling your car or charging your car in Hawaii.
All right. Okay. I'm just wondering, is there enough? Hawaii doesn't have blackouts or brownouts electric brownouts?
No, we do. It's not. We still have electricity that goes 24 hours. There's no blackouts. We do have blackouts, of course, and probably more than most places when the weather is bad, especially in the country and on the North Shore. When I lived there, we had blackouts all the time, but that's not because of a lack of electricity. It's because of old infrastructure
I see. I see. All right.
and fragile infrastructure.
So talking about many of the interesting things that are coming up, I know that next year you're going next week or this week you're going to be coming to Houston, as you mentioned, and that's really on your way to IMEX. I think that's in Germany, and maybe it'd be
Yes.
interesting for people to hear a little bit. First of all, I think a lot of people don't know what IMEX is, and secondly,
Well, I mean, anyone in the travel business probably have heard about IMEX. It's now the largest travel meeting and incentive show. There are two of them. One, the original one is in Frankfurt, Germany every year. And there's also IMEX America, what is in Las Vegas every year. It's quite
Yeah.
big. It's probably the #1 event now for convention centers and meeting facilities and hotels. So it's quite popular, and it's done by a gentleman who did this single-handed, who's still there, even though he's no longer the CEO. His name is Ray Bloom. I think his daughter or his son now runs the company. Amazing guy, I have to say. He is still there every time you go to IMEX. He's shaking hands with every single exhibitors when they leave at the end of a successful trade show. It has a lot of personal touch, and
I
it's a good
understand.
event.
And we at the World Tourism Network are going to be having a stand there. Is that correct?
Yes, we join our stand with Itobo News. It's stand number F647. And there are still, I think we only have 3 slots left if you want to do an interview with us and meet us. We're pretty much sold out for the 3 days, but you can go to WTN.travel, click on events, or you can go to worldtourismevents.com. Last I looked, there was, I think, only one slot at 2 p.m. on Friday, and that may have been gone. But if not, just stop by the stand. We'd be happy to say hello and take your business card. And the good thing is we have a trial membership for the World Tourism Network. So when you come by, you get several months for free with no obligation. You get your profile for World Tourism Network. So it's a really good way of getting a taste what WTN is all about.
Exactly. And, of course, we now, I think WTN, if I'm not mistaken, we are now in about 132 countries around the world. And one of the great things about World Tourism Networking is exactly it. It's a place for people to network and gives people opportunities to get to meet colleagues or other people who might want to do business with you from different parts around the world. So I know we're talking about a series of workshops and academic presentations starting very soon and going through the rest of 2023 and entering in 2024. And people who want to become successful, this is a great way to get involved, not only with the World Tourism Network, but make your business even more international and get new clients from around the world.
Yeah, we're about the SMEs, the small and medium-sized businesses in the world.
Yes.
And if you look at what is going on, and I will summarize this a little bit, if you haven't seen it, and maybe put it all together. A, B, and C is there right now about leadership difficulties in other larger organizations these days, and it really has a lot to do with politics in the organization and a very complicated bureaucracy. We don't have this. When we want to do something, we pick up the phone and we decide to do it, and we do it. So we're very easy, and I think that makes us more effective than others. If you look in the world today, we had a story about the CEO of Skoll International, who was let go back in last year, and she sued Skoll and now won a big court case in Torremolinos in Spain, and Skoll has to reimburse her. Similar cases are going on at the World Travel and Tourism Council, where literally the organization is in disarray. Members are leaving, including big members like Manfredi. I cannot pronounce his last name, but he originally owned some of the major cruise lines based in Monaco. We have
Monaco,
American
Monaco,
Express, in Monaco. It's a little country in the southern part of Spain,
yeah,
independent country.
it's Spain or
Independent of
France,
France, yes,
right? In
France.
English,
And
in
then
English, it's pronounced Monaco in English.
Monaco, okay, fine. And then we have the situation in London at WTTC with big companies like American Express just left, and Visit Portugal did. So they have some issues what involves, I think for the most part, leadership. In this case, the CEO of the organization. People have been critical about the election, some for a chairman that should have happened in April and didn't happen for some reason. We don't know the whole story. And then we have PATA, the Pacific Asia Travel Association, where the CEO just left, surprisingly, after just a few months. And now they're looking for new leadership. And I know several of our friends actually applied to, they haven't made a secret out, I can say, is Deepak, who was the former head of the Nepal Tourism Board. And I think also our friend Jens, who is currently the CEO of the Barbados Tourism Board, applied for the job and are currently in Bangkok. And let's see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really interesting is we can see these organizations with very large corporations have become very political, while the World Tourism Network has really emphasized becoming a big family. And if you think about it, that's what tourism really ought to be. We ought to take the politics out of it and up the sense that as an industry, we should be hospitality, caring, love, bringing people together. And so I think that's why it's so important that the World Tourism Network, at this critical time in tourism, where one, we see airports full, airplanes, every airplane is full. How this will go on, we don't know. I know that they're expecting the summer to have tremendous amount of activity, both in Europe and the United States. And we see prices going up. In 2 weeks, I'll be in Mexico, where it's now as expensive to get to Zacatecas, Mexico, as it is to get to Europe, or used to be to get to Europe. And a week later, I'll be in Portugal, and the prices have doubled almost from where they were last year on airlines. So again, we're seeing a real reworking of the tourism industry and travel industry. Will this continue, or will it come to a crashing halt? I guess only God knows that.
Yeah, and then of course we cannot handle the capacity. There are not enough workers in the hospitality industry, and we don't have enough pilots to operate all these aircraft. So there have been disastrous situations. We all remember Southwest Airlines. Many others, American and Delta, are not exempt from this.
50%.
United, everyone. It is a real issue here, the pilot shortage.
Yes.
And they're strict. And after this show, we'll be hearing actually from Mr. Hudson on Flyers Right about his effort on getting compensation for those people that lost family members with the Boeing 737 crash, and legislation and several other things. So stay tuned after this event. You will hear a video of the press conference that took place this morning in Washington, D.C. So there's a lot going on. It's not like all gloomy.
We don't need to have
we can handle it.
I think there's two issues. One, airline safety has gone down terribly, and including people, there's lack of people working in the control towers, etc. And the other side of that is that you're constantly facing flight delays, and either flight delays or flight cancellations. And many of us travel for business, and it's not a question of just I'll pick up the hotel a day later. If you have to speak at IMAX, or you have to speak someplace else, and you don't get there till 2 days late, you lost a good part of your business. That's a major crisis for you or for anyone. So I was just in Quito, Ecuador, 1 o'clock in the morning. They canceled the flight. They announced that they didn't have proper brakes on the plane. We had to get off. We didn't get a flight till the next day at 1 a.m. the next morning. That meant people really lost 2 days to get home. And they had a line, and I sent pictures to United Airlines showing them the line was maybe 6 or 7 hours for them to reschedule people. and you had women and children crying. There was no bathrooms to go to. It was awful. And I was in Washington this week with a number of embassies, and one of the ambassadors said to me, "Why is flying so terrible in the United States?" And I said, "Well, actually, Europe is catching up with us, so it's a race to see who can have worse situations. But the elegance of air travel has now turned into being nothing more than a bus in the sky, and that's really tragic."
Yeah, it's not a bus. Bus rides can be very comfortable. Airline rides can be a lot less comfortable.
Well
And I
said.
never understand, when you fly to Honolulu, for example, make sure you go on a wide body plane. United, especially Hawaiian Airlines, offering a good variety of wide body planes, but God forbids, don't go on American Airlines from Los Angeles, San Francisco, or Seattle to Honolulu, or one of these United flights or Delta flights that operate still with the 737 or with an Airbus Neon. It's incredible bad. You don't have enough room, even as a medium-sized person, to turn around in the bathroom, and there's simply no room. You cannot maneuver anymore. It's just to be on this 5 or 6 hour flight like this, it's torture.
Yes, and even on the mainland in the United States, and I think also in Europe, you have, for example, from Houston to Toronto, then an embryo jet. One of these little regional jets. Well, that's 4 hours. Being 4 hours on a regional jet is not fun.
No.
And
I don't.
and yet you see this more and more. I understand why they're trying to save fuel. I understand why they're trying to, make money. But on the other hand, the airline industry today is making a huge amount of money. Profits are they're doing extremely well. Profits are at record levels. And you know what? I don't see them sharing it with their workers, and they certainly are not sharing it with their customers.
Yeah, and you can actually provide more customer service. It's not all that difficult, and it's really not all that costly. If you consider that full fare flying to Europe from most US gateways exceeds $10,000 or more round trip, and you compare it with what the airline is paying for a meal. When I talked to my friend who works for the airline service agency and responsible for all the Star Alliance flight in Munich, Germany, even a business class meal is not going to cost more than $20. First class, what only Lufthansa right now offers a first class, no one else has a first class, it's about $60. But in first class, you pay $15,000 and more to fly to the United States. So I think investing a little bit more in items that make flights fun is good. I remember the times, and they still do, I heard, Singapore Airlines serving Dom Perignon in business and first class. That was wonderful. Not that Dom Perignon is so good, but just to get the feeling you can have a Dom Perignon champagne is a wonderful feeling,
Well, and I guess part of the decision that has to be made is, are you offering nothing more than basic transportation in the sky, or are you offering an experience? And people will pay for the experience, but they won't pay to just sit on a urban bus that happens to fly. And so, you kind of wonder, will they now have standing room only on airplanes, or they put us on some form of bar stool and figure out a way to strap us in onto a bar stool? It's tough.
Honestly, I mean, you laugh, but EasyJet tried this. They didn't succeed with the application in the EU. I think it was in Ireland, that on flights of an hour or so, they did want to try standing rooms for cheap flights. So you are strapped to the wall or whatever, and you save money.
Well, it's they haven't succeeded yet, but that doesn't mean try again. So I understand a lot of other events are taking place. I think you were telling me about some of your friends on the North Shore that are having birthdays.
Yes, I wanted to say our congratulations to Tal from Javani Thai restaurant in Haleiwa. And it's her birthday, and I have to say it's really a special place. All of us at eTurbo News for many years and decades, almost the 2 decades or 25 years now in business, have been at this place, and we took our guests and friends there. It's wonderful. It's still home style cooking. 3 generations of the same family used to work there. Unfortunately, now it's still 3 generations. They actually had 4 generations. I'm sorry, and grandmother passed away a few years. And it's a wonderful feeling, and it really shows SMEs can be successful. They don't. You wait a little bit for your food, but it's all fresh. They have no microwave. They don't believe in microwave, and there's not going to be anything put in the food to make it look nicer or make it look more red or more green. No NGOs, and that's a concept you can really only find in restaurants that are done by families or under special leadership. And tell happy birthday, and if you watch this, we're going to send you a copy of this, and we hope you enjoy your day on Friday. Thanks for the invitation. Unfortunately, I'm going to be on my way to Houston when you're flying, but I will have a sandwich on United Airlines or something, and think about your excellent Thai food.
Right. And you'll be coming during my birthday month, so you'll be able to bring me a present from Hawaii.
Okay. And I heard even the fire department came to your birthday, right?
Yes, I had a very unique, I sent you a picture of it. Very few people have a surprise. The fire department came, and we all got to take pictures with the fire department. Now that is truly customer service.
Absolutely. Well, anyone else, please stay tuned. We're going to have another segment about a press conference. It's worth hearing in. It's from Flyers Rights. And then we're going to give you some snippet about our preparation for our upcoming event in Indonesia, the end of the year. So stay tuned and watch this, and we'll see you again very soon. And if you missed most of it or some of it, just wait. We're going to repeat it, or you go to breakingnewsshow.com, and you will be able to watch this event and all our other different shows we've done over the year. Thank you, Peter. And
thank you. I call you Thomas, or those who still call you Juergen, whatever your name is. But we do know you have the same last name, both 2 different first names, but you got a Steinmetz at the end. You have a wonderful flight here to Texas, and we're going to have a big sign up saying, howdy y'all.
All right, Peter. And
Bye-bye.
Please stay tuned. Aloha.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you very much for attending the Flyers Rights press conference today on the case that we brought 4 years ago involving the Boeing 737 MAX. This case began really before the last crash of the MAX in 2019. I'd like to give you a little background of where we came from, why we're here today, and perhaps where we're going. My name is Paul Hudson. I'm president of FlyersRights.org, the largest airline passenger group. We're also the designated representative for the general public and passengers on FAA safety advisory committees. Now, personally, I was not aware of the MAX problems until after the first crash. No one else was either, except people at the FAA certainly knew some things, and Boeing knew a lot about how defective their plane was. After the first crash in October of 2019, it was far away in Indonesia. There were no Americans. I was sort of paying attention to it, but then I got a phone call from a frequent traveler on Line Air. That was the airline that went down. And he said, there's a real problem here. I contacted the Boeing representative, who I'm well acquainted with for many years, after seeing what was happening with the fact that the plane obviously had a haywire flight control system that had taken over, caused lots of up and downs, and then crashed, killing everyone into the sea. Brand new plane. And I asked him, well, how come Boeing hasn't grounded this plane? This is the first week in December of 2018. And his answer was, well, it's under investigation with the NTSB, but we can't tell you anything. It's all secret. So I waited a few weeks. Then I heard, well, we're going to have a fix out in January of 19. Never happened. I waited a little longer. I shouldn't have done that. Then what happened in March? The second plane went down. Now we have 346 lives lost. I then met with then Associate Administrator for Safety at the FAA. His name was Ali Barami. And I asked him, why were you not going to release the information on any fix to this system so we know for sure that it's safe the next time it's ungrounded? Meanwhile, the FAA, after the first crash, had said it's safe. Boeing had said it's safe. And even after the second crash, they all said it's safe. It turned out that China, perhaps Canada, and some other countries had grounded it, and then they overruled essentially the FAA and grounded the plane the next day. Well, Ali Barami, he said, well, we've always done it this way. We keep everything secret, and there's no reason I can see to change things. Of course, we disagreed, and we filed what's called a formal Freedom of Information request. That was ignored. Oh, and by the way, there were 70 other organizations and people that also filed Freedom of Information or FOIA requests. They were also ignored. But Flyers Rights was the only one that took it to court. And in December of 19, we began this action, which today, this morning, there was an oral argument before the US Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit. Now, the issue is, should the FAA be able to keep secret essentially all the data relating to its decisions on aircraft certification, and more broadly on safety enforcement generally? We think the answer clearly is, particularly when you have a crash, the information should be public or at least released to outside experts so they can evaluate it. But the FAA disagrees. They want to keep everything secret. So in the litigation that began in the district court, we found out that there were approximately 95 documents, 9,500 pages of documents that they used to unground the MAX in November of 20. Virtually none of it was released. And everything was labeled a trade secret or proprietary information. Also, the individuals involved were also kept secret under Personal Privacy Protection Act. This policy, if it's ratified by the appeal court, won't just apply to the MAX, won't just apply to the FAA. It'll apply to all federal agencies. It'll apply to everyone, especially those that have jurisdictions over health and safety. Because under the FAA policy, almost everything can be labeled as proprietary or trade secrets or some other exception. And that will simply collapse the intention of FOIA, which is to make a government agency decisions transparent. Now, we thought we had some progress in this because both Boeing CEO and the then FAA administrator promised Congress, promised the public that everything would be transparent in the ungrounding. But however, when we got to court, it was a different story. They said, well, that didn't really mean what it said. That was just puffery. That had nothing to do with the actual policy to keep any hard data secret. Now, in addition to that, we had about a dozen safety experts who agreed with us, including some stakeholders like the Flight Attendants Union, but it didn't matter. Boeing prevailed at the district court level, and now some of these experts also filed a brief in the current appeal. And this morning, that was argued by our lead counsel, Joseph Sandler, and I'd like to have him come up and say a few words about the legal aspects of the case and where he sees it happening now.
Thanks, Paul. So I think it's safe to say that in spite of the commitment of the current administration to greater openness and transparency and meaningful enforcement of the Freedom of Information Act, the courts have been making it more difficult to use FOIA to find out, in the words of the Supreme Court when it first came out, what the government is up to. In 2019, the Supreme Court decided the Argus Food Marketing Institute versus Argus Leader case, in which they held that if information is normally treated as confidential and proprietary by a business that submits it to a government agency, the presumption is it can be withheld from the public, withheld under in response to a Freedom of Information Act request. So that decision has threatened to make it much more difficult to figure out the basis for agency decisions involving any regulated industry, whether it's airlines, whether it's cars, whether it's whatever it is. And in this case, as Paul explained, the FAA deferred lock, stock, and barrel to Boeing's determination that every piece of paper they submitted, every document they submitted to persuade the agency to unground the 737 MAX was confidential and proprietary and had to be withheld from the public. I think we were encouraged this morning that the panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit expressed skepticism and concern about the FAA's efforts to just throw a complete blanket of secrecy over every document that Boeing had submitted, including the FAA's own comments and responses to Boeing's proposed fixes to the aircraft design, and including the test procedures, the means of compliance that Boeing itself had proposed to demonstrate its compliance with the FAA's own regulations. In fact, when this appeal was first filed, the government urged the Court of Appeals to throw it out without even hearing it, based on summary affirmance of the district court's decision, and the court decided to hear it. I think, we're hopeful that there will be hopeful, very, cautiously optimistic that there may be some, the court will take on to some extent the wholesale effort to keep everything secret on the part of the FAA. But it'll be necessary, for the lower courts to find ways to limit the damage to the Supreme Court decision to the proper implementation of Freedom of Information Act, and ultimately maybe necessary, for Congress to act further if we can't achieve it through the courts. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.